I know you talked a lot about increasing the land function.
Mm-hmm. Or landscape function.
Landscape function.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Well, what it basically means is trying to look at a range of different indicators. So things like that you can observe at the soil surface. So, for example, when you're looking at, say, it's kind of we first based it off what Graziers did with his bullseye program, I suppose you call it. He wrote a book on that the Culvera Coalition published, I think, in about 2010 or 11, which is called Bullseye, Realising Your Rangeland Objectives or something like that. Kirk was my first holistic management teacher. And basically he made a dartboard, where you had a gold, silver and bronze, and the spokes of the dartboard, if you like, were that if you looked at plant pedestaling, right? So if you look at a perennial plant, were you able to see that the perennial grass, that the soil was actually at the same level, or was it up on a pedestal? Because that would indicate erosion around that, right? Or, sheet erosion. Did you have was manure being incorporated? Right? Was there the visible decomposition of the manure? So as I talked about yesterday, you come here to Polyface or a lot of places, and dung beetles attack the manure it disappears in a day or two, right? The flies barely get a chance, right? Then you go to other places and, it's desiccated on the soil surface years later, right? And a rain will wash it all away, so there's no incorporation, it all goes into the air. Then there's litter incorporation and litter decomposition. How much of the soil surface is armoured by biological decomposition of the litter that comes from the plants? Because even when plants are dead or the season's dormant, or it's a dormant season, I should say, you still want to have some form of a soil armour. So even if there's not a lot of decomposition, the fungal hyphae and other species are actually holding it all together, knitting it together. So it holds. So all of those things then, and a bunch of other things that you observe, then lead you to understand how much infiltration you'll get. So landscape function could be described as observing all of these outcomes, you might say, that are then leading to understanding whether you've got good rainfall infiltration, whether you've got good soil stability, and whether you've got good nutrient cycling. And they're the three main outcomes, I suppose, that you're looking to get with landscape function. And if you can get those things done, then happy days. Now, of course, then you zoom in on that, and as we heard from John Kemp today and others, then there's the nitty-gritty of what I call pulling the levers, the grazing levers, or whether you go 1 day and a big space, or 3-day grazers, 11 moves a day, whatever it is, whether you put in cover crops, whether you, do all sorts of different things, treatments as we call them, as to whether you're going to accelerate that process to getting good landscape function or not, right? And more production and more profit, hopefully. And that's the dance, I suppose, is how much labour and input versus how much product you're putting out.
Right, yeah. That's a really interesting way to put it, too, because it's like, I'm sure one of the strategies you could use your cattle. I got cattle, so I'm just going to use cattle as an example. But using your cattle to get some type of impact on the land base so that you can see all those things you were just talking about in the soil, so that you know that you are going down the right path. Is that kind of the one thing that you suggest for folks too?
Well, absolutely. Well, you see so many people get a sense of paralysis by an analysis, which is an often used term. But when it comes to monitoring, and they get really scared and monitoring, I need to do transects, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And look, there's validity to all of that, but I think that people, like I often say that, success is when mastery is achieved as quickly as possible. And the corollary of that is that I would say that, you're going to start off pretty high on observation because it's all new to you, and it's exciting, and you're infatuated with it. You're hanging out with the cows, they become your new best friends and all the rest of it. as does the grassland itself. And there's a heightened familiarity that you go through. And a thing I've said to a lot of people is, I remember years ago, one of my clients said to me, he was a bit despondent, and I said to him, because he just thought, I'll never get as experienced as all these old guys that are around me, because he was a young grazier and he's surrounded by a lot of old men who, he'd been in that district for a long time, and he was a sort of new kid on the block, and him doing new things made him put his sort of head up, right? And when you do new things in everyone else around you doing set stocking or whatever, you come in and with your fancy ways, you immediately become the new kid, and you're up for a bit of potentially even abuse, right? And I said to him, look, this is how it works. In this district, you do an all-year grazing, right? And I said to him, look, in a year, if you move your animals once a day, you've got 365 opportunities every year to have an interaction. Blokes next door, they're moving their animals once a month, once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? So do the math on that about, they might have been grazing for 50 years. Now, I'm not saying to say you're going to get 50 years experience in 1 year, if that's what the ratio is, but you're on an accelerated observational pathway.
Yeah.
So your movement to some form of mastery is going to be much, much greater. And guess what? You're probably going to be you're going to be curious, right? Curiosity is such a strong feature in a human, I think, and something a lot of people lack. And I would have to say that the people around you probably lack curiosity. They probably don't lack a job outside of this farm either, right?
Right.
To pay for the lack of curiosity and energy that they're putting to their purpose. So when things become when things move from being that heightened inquiry and really highly curious state, sort of almost like an infatuation, and then you move past that, then it becomes artful, and it just becomes your new way. You see the world in a different way. So when it comes to landscape function, I can't not see landscape function, or I can't not look at it. Right? Yeah. Because you look at it all the time. You've got a new lens, and intent is a really powerful thing. So if you combine intent and curiosity together, you've got a pretty good package.
It's almost like for folks who, I know when they first start farming, they're like, I can't even identify a grass. It's like, and then when you start actually going through and spending time with your grasslands, you're like, this is a plantain, this is a clover, this is a fescue, and then you see it everywhere. You can't unsee those plants when you're just out in your daily life.
Yeah, there is a bias. It's one of I think there's 140 odd biases that we have. Confirmation, affirmation biases, and so on. And there's one of them, when you get a car and then you see that same car on the road, and you can't not see that car, and there just seems to be more of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a form of bias, but it's the same sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
So, and the more we understand about that, then the better. And that gives you understanding about what your pathway is going to look like. Because a lot of people suffer from uncertainty when they don't really need to. Yeah. Uncertainty, I think, is often a form of insecurity.
Uncertainty is about what? Just like
what's coming? What's coming? Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of people are doing this lonely, right?
Right.
So you don't necessarily have people come around saying, "No, you're doing a good job," or just coming around and giving you some honest feedback. Right. You are sort of living in your own circle.
And that's why it's great to come to these events.
That's why it's good to come to these events.
We're all kind of in that circle, and we're like, we need to discuss the challenges or say, this is what I experienced. What about you?
Well, that's why it's good to have, in Australia, Terry McCosker of RCS, he developed this executive link program, which I think they have here with Grazing for Profit as well.
Ranching for Profit has it,
Ranching for Profit. It's called Grazing for Profit in Australia.
Yep.
We don't do ranches per se. Right. Yeah, we do stations.
That's right. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what a station is, but okay, sounds good.
It's really big.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's about staying in contact, because the isolation thing is real. And if you can have people come out to your place, and like other people have what's called grazing groups. Yeah. So you'll find a few people within within an hour of you, and just catch up once a month. Come over and have a beer and a barbecue or something like that, and do a paddock walk. And
look
at
it
your
can be
animal.
that simple.
It can be exactly that simple. It doesn't need to be a formal, super formal thing.
Right.
Because part of it is just getting the pat on the back and a bit of fellowship, which is important. And secondly is to get some, let's, like Ty was talking about before, tell me everything that's going bad.
Right.
Can you please tell me that? And be okay about that. Right.
Yeah.
Don't make it so that it's emotionally negative to do that.
Take it as well-intended criticism.
Yeah,
because that's what it is.
Well-intended feedback.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it is feedback. Yeah.
And I've hosted a few pasture walks over the years, and that's the reason I do it. It's a lot of work to host like 30 or 40 or 60 people, but then you get like that many eyes on your place, and then they'll be like, why are you doing that? And sometimes I got answers, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know. That's a great question. And
it's a lot less work if you do a potluck.
Okay.
In Spain, they do a version of potlucks, and then everyone competes with each other as far as their food is concerned, which I find absolutely I went to one once in Mallorca, where I've worked a lot, and it was with the Porreras Farmers Union. It was one of the best courses I've ever done. We didn't do the catering. The farmers did their own catering.
Oh, cool.
And it was so good. There was all these pot pies and empanadas and wines and cheeses and dried food. It was just like, I've still got a photo of the table. It was just amazing.
Oh, I love it.
But the farmers, during the breaks, they were coming up and saying, don't have their sobrasada, which is a sausage. Don't have theirs. Have mine. Mine's better. Which I thought, isn't that the best competition?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And we don't have enough of that sort of... that's the best form of competition.
Yeah, and that's a playful, fun form of competition.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, some of them are deadly serious. Yeah. But, I think food is often... it's something that's not considered. I've been to a lot of farms where they produce all of this food, but you never consume it.
Yeah.
They still buy outside, or they still eat badly.
It's a lot of times I see a lot of farmers who are growing a lot of food. I put that in quotations because I don't know if it's technically food or not. I think John was saying, is it food or a crop? And they're not in the bill of health because they just go to the store and buy packaged food. Again, teach your own, but it's like, you've got some nutrient-dense soil and you're grazing cattle and they don't even eat their own beef. I'm like, well, why?
Well, and to me, it's the best form of feedback. There's that Amway principle of be your own best customer. And we often talk about that if you're going to grow something, then you ought to like eating what you grow. Right? And that's, like, if you're a zucchini grower, for example, you probably want to enjoy zucchinis because you're going to have a lot of them, right? Well, they do say that the best drug dealers are those that don't consume the product, but that's a whole other business model. But just throw that one in. But you need to, like, I've got clients, for example, who slaughter their own animals on their own farms, and they do that as critical feedback because that gives them they've got an autopsy. That's the way they look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've become totally invested in a whole connection between the bodily health of that animal, whose life they're taking, so they owe them that respect, as well as, and they then connect that with what they're doing and what they're doing well or what they're doing not so well.
You have clients all over the world.
Yeah.
Do you think, this is a curiosity question for me, do you think Americans just don't value or respect food anymore? For versus other countries.
Depends on where you are. I think Australia and the United States, New Zealand, England. I'd say most of the Western countries, and I wouldn't include Spain or Italy in that because while they're Western, they're sort of a subset.
Right.
But if I say the English-speaking Western countries, and to an extent Germany, the food culture is not as strong as it once was. And that's really sad. And you see, like, the appearance the body appearance of people in the United States is not that different to Australia. Australia's catching up to the United States. Obesity rates are through the roof, as is chronic disease. We're not that far behind that, right? And you see every time I come here, when we go through, you can't use an airport as an example, but just around general life, and even at this workshop today, I don't want to focus on people's body image as being an expression of their diet, but it is an expression of diet. And so, I think it's not just here, right? And people say, oh, it's the American diet. Well, it's not just the American diet. People have been sucked into convenience everywhere. And been sucked into other people preparing what they think you should eat. And they've done a good job of marketing that. And making it convenient and so on. So, but I think that people definitely need to arrest that. And that is part of the healing that, you shouldn't be just healing your land. A lot of people do an exceptional job of healing their land, but are not doing anything about healing themselves on a whole range of levels, including the healing of their diet. And celebrating that, and having the enjoyment of being proud of what you produce, and learning how to cook. I mean,
No, I get it. I proudly cook most of my meals and enjoy the fruits of my cattle. Last question, because I know you've had a long last 2 days and I've been answering a lot of questions for all of us here, but for someone maybe starting out and doesn't have a lot of experience when it comes to just keeping things simple, when it comes to just watching and observing their landscape, what are just maybe 1 or 2 tips that they can take with them now and just immediately go outside and be like, okay, look at their farmscape, be like, okay, I need to observe this now, and maybe keep observing it over the years to make sure I'm going on the right track, or some just fun things that they can start observing?
Well, the landscape function number that we talked about before, that's probably one of the clearest things that they could do, and that, you just need a set of at least one eye that works. Helps if you've got knees that allow you to get down on the ground and get back up again. So that's probably the simplest and freest and most, I would say, thing that you can record quite easily, whether it's just in memory or by filling out a simple chart and using a camera to take a photo of. That, if you have, I think having livestock is one of the more powerful tools that you can have, because you get direct feedback. So when you started, you're probably your first day, you're putting out the fence and you're going, well, I don't know if I've put out the right amount of fence, right? And so on. And
I put it out, took it up, and decided to move it this way. And then I was like, finally, I was like, just put them in.
And you did, right?
Just go.
And then you got your feedback from that. And then the next day, what was it like?
Exactly.
Right? It was a bit better. It was a bit better. Like Joel says, do things badly first, right? And you will always do that, because you've got, even if you've been mentored by others, you'll still find that it's your place. You've pressed your press go button, deep breath, off we go, right? But then you get the feedback, and and your animals will get the feedback as well, because they're learning this too, right?
Exactly.
And animals, as you know, are much more bright and interested. And one of the things that we try and encourage as just a side bit is curiosity in animals. Curiosity in animals and their diet is increased as they de-stress. So as you actively de-stress an animal, its curiosity increases. Right? Just as us, so if you think about us, if we're stressed, we lack curiosity. If you've got fear, you lack curiosity. Absolutely. Because part of your brain just goes into fright, right?
It just shuts off your survival mode.
Exactly. So it's the same with animals, right? And they are prey animals. We're not prey animals, right? We're sort of a low-level predator, right? So therefore, they are already much more hardwired to be preyed upon than we are. So you got to sort of imagine. I think that's what Temple Grandin did such a great job of helping us understand. So if you can do that, put those things together, you being less stressed, they being less stressed, increase the curiosity, then away it will go. Because if they're curious,
just go and do and be.
Go and do and be, and keep and just keep applying feedback. I mean, the holistic management feedback is, make decisions assuming you're wrong with the environment, which is immediately says, be humble, right?
Right.
Understand that nature is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
So don't make it more complex than
exactly.
it needs to be, right?
Exactly.
And then you monitor, apply feedback, replan, and that's exactly what you're doing with your daily or twice daily moves, or however you play that with livestock. So you have a greater opportunity with livestock because of that daily, bi-daily, whatever it is, feedback that you're getting.
Read the land that they were on, read the cows, see what their manure is, read the dung beetles, read the plant. There's so many things you can read.
I was out with Joel the other day, and we moved, first day I got here, and we moved the cows, and he moved. He said, I never get sick of this.
Yeah.
And how many thousands of times,
Right.
as what is he, 67 years of age, 10 years older than me, and how many thousands of times has he done that, and to still be in, and it's a simple thing. I mean, you just left the fence and there's just a rush of cows going into the next end. It's a buzz.
It is.
They're
absolutely
happy. It's like happy kids.
It is.
Yeah,
it's fun to watch them. It's like it's a energy that's released too when they move, and I feel
it's something
like farmers,
new. It is.
Yeah.
It's something new because especially if you're doing it as you should, not in this. You're not doing it you might do it at 4 o'clock every day, whatever that works, but you're coming into a new area that they haven't been into at that time of year before, or maybe 5 years before. So you've always got that mosaic going on. Yeah. So anyway,
awesome.
They're my main two things.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Darren.
No worries.
I appreciated your presentation this week at the Stockman Grass Farmer event, and thanks for sitting down and chit-chatting with me for a little bit and helping us spread the good word about how to increase our landscape function.
Good on you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.